And the besieged Ardea, all in post, borne by the trustless wings of false desire. Lust, breathed Tarquin leaves the Roman host, and to Calatium bears the lightless fire, which, in pale embers hid, lurks to aspire and girdle with embracing flames the waist of Colatine's fair love, Lucrece the chaste. Haply that name of chaste unhappily set this baitless edge on his keen appetite, when Collatine unwisely did not let to praise the clear, unmatched red and white which triumphed in that sky of his delight, where mortal stars, as bright as heaven's beauties with pure aspects, did him peculiar duties. For he, the night before in Tarquin's tent, unlocked the treasure of his happy state. What priceless wealth the heavens had him lent in the possession of his beauteous mate, reckoning his fortune at such high proud rate that kings might be espoused to more fame, but king nor peer to such a peerless dame. Perchance his boast of Lucrece's sovereignty suggested this proud issue of a king, for by our ears our hearts oft tainted be. Perchance that envy of so rich a thing, braving compare disdainfully, did sting his high-pitched thoughts, that meaner men should vaunt that golden hap which their superiors want. But some untimely thought did instigate his all too timeless speed, if none of those, his honour, his affairs, his friends, his state, neglected all, with swift intent he goes to quench the coal which in his liver glows. O rash, false heat, wrapped in repentant cold, thy hasty spring still blasts and ne'er grows old. When at Calatium this false lord arrived, well was he welcomed by the Roman dame, within whose face beauty and virtue strived, which of them both should underprop her fame. When virtue bragged, beauty would blush for shame. When beauty boasted blushes, in despite, virtue would stain that o'er with silver white. This silent war of lilies and of roses, which Tarquin viewed in her fair face's field, in their pure ranks his traitor eye encloses, where lest between them both it should be killed, the coward captive, vanquished, doth yield to those two armies that would let him go, rather than triumph in so false a foe. Now thinks he that her husband's shallow tongue, the niggard prodigal that praised her so in that high task, hath done her beauty wrong, which far exceeds his barren skill to show. Therefore that praise which Collatine doth owe enchanted Tarquin answers with surmise in silent wonder of still gazing eyes. This earthly saint, adored by this devil, little suspecteth the false worshipper, for unstained thoughts do seldom dream on evil. Birds never limed, no secret bushes fear, so guiltless she securely gives good cheer and reverend welcome to her princely guest, whose inward ill no outward harm express. His stories to her ears, her husband's fame, won in the fields of fruitful Italy, and decks with praises Collatine's high name, made glorious by his manly chivalry, with bruised arms and wreaths of victory. Her joy with heaved up hand she doth express, and wordless so greets heaven for his success. Far from the purpose of his coming thither, he makes excuses for his being there. No cloudy show of stormy, blustering weather doth yet in his fair welkin once appear, till sable night, mother of dread and fear, upon the world dim darkness doth display, and in her vaulty prison stows the day. For then is Tarquin brought unto his bed, intending weariness with heavy sprite. For after supper, long he questioned with modest Lucrece, and wore out the night. Now leaden slumber with life's strength doth fight, and everyone to rest themselves betake, save thieves and cares and troubled minds that wake, as one of which doth Tarquin lie revolving, the sundry dangers of his will's obtaining, yet ever to obtain his will resolving. The weak-built hopes persuade him to abstaining. Despair to gain doth traffic oft for gaining, and when great treasure is the meed proposed, though death be adjunct, there's no death supposed. Those that much covet are with gain so fond, that what they have not, that which they possess, they scatter and unloose it from their bond, and so, by hoping more, they have but less, or gaining more. The profit of excess is but to surfeit, and such grief sustain, that they prove bankrupt in this poor rich gain. Such hazard now must doting Tarquin make, pawning his honour to obtain his lust, and for himself he must forsake. Then where is truth, if there be no self-trust? When shall he think to find a stranger just, when he himself confounds, betrays to slanderous tongues and wretched hateful days? Now stole upon the time the dead of night, when heavy sleep had closed up mortal eye. No comfortable star did lend his light, no noise, but owls and wolves' death-boding cries. Now serves the season that they may surprise the silly lambs. Pure thoughts are dead and still, while lust and murder wakes to stain and kill. And now this lustful lord leapt from his bed, throwing his mantle rudely o'er his arm, is madly tossed between desire and dread. The one sweetly flatters, the other feareth harm. But honest fear, bewitched with lust fell charm, doth too oft betake him to retire, beaten away by brain-sick, rude desire. His falchion on a flint he softly smiteth, that from the cold stone sparks of fire do fly, whereat a waxen torch forthwith he lighteth, which must be lodestar to his lustful eye, and to the flame thus speaks advisedly: as from this cold flint I enforced this fire, so Lucrece must I force to my desire. Here, pale with fear, he doth premeditate the dangers of his loathsome enterprise, and in his inward mind he doth debate what following sorrow may on this arise. Then looking scornfully, he doth despise the naked armour of his still slaughtered lust, and justly thus controls his thoughts unjust. Oh, shame to knighthood and to shining arms! Oh, foul dishonour to my household's grave! Oh, impious act, including all foul harms! A martial man to be soft fancy's slave! True valour, still a true respect should have, and my digression is so vile, so base, that it will live engraven in my face. What win I if I gain the thing I seek, a dream, a breath, a froth of fleeting joy, who buys a minute's mirth to wail a week, or sells eternity to get a toy? For one sweet grape, who will the vine destroy? Or what fond beggar but to touch the crown would the sceptre straight be strucken down, had Collatinus killed my son or sire, or lain in ambush to betray my life, or were he not my dear friend? This desire might have excuse to work upon his wife, as in revenge, or quittal of such strife, but as he is my kinsman, my dear friend, the shame and fault finds no excuse nor end. Shameful it is, aye, if the fact be known. Hateful it is. There is no hate in loving. I'll beg her love, but she is not her own. The worst is but denial and reproving. My will is strong, past reason's weak removing. Who fears a sentence or an old man's sore shall by a painted cloth be kept in awe. And childish fear of want, debating die. Respect and reason wait on wrinkled age. My heart shall never countermand mine eye. Sad pause and deep regard beseems the sage. My part is youth, and beats these from the stage. Desire my pilot is, beauty my prize. Then who fears sinking where such treasure lies? As corn o'ergrown by weeds, so heedful fear is almost choked by unresisted lust. Away he steals, with open, listening ear, full of foul hope and full of fond mistrust, both which, as servitors to the unjust, so cross him with their opposite persuasion, that now he vows a league, and now invasion. And therein heartens up his servile powers, who flattered by their leaders' jock and show, stuff up his lust as minutes fill up hours, and as their captain, so their pride doth grow, paying more slavish tribute than they owe. By reprobate desire thus madly led, the Roman lord marcheth to Lucrece's bed. The locks between her chamber and his will, each one by him enforced, retires his ward, but as they open, they orate his ill, which drives the creeping thief to some regard. The threshold grates the door to have him heard, night-wandering weasels shriek to see him there, they fright him, yet he still pursues his fear. As each unwilling porthole yields him way, through little vents and crannies of the place, the wind wars with his torch to make him stay, blowing the smoke of it into his face, extinguishing his conduct in this case. But his hot heart, which fond desire doth scorch, puffs forth another wind that fires the torch. And being lighted, by the light he spies Lucretia's glove, wherein a needle sticks. He takes it from the rushes where it lies, and gripping it, the needle his finger pricks, as who should say, this glove to wanton tricks is not inured, return again in haste. Thou seest, our mistress' ornaments are chaste. But all these poor forbiddings could not stay him. He, in the worst sense, consters their denial, the doors, the wind, the glove that did delay him, he takes for accidental things of trial, or as those bars which stop the hourly dial, who with a lingering stay his course doth let, till every minute pays the hour his debt. So, quoth he, these lets attend the time like little frosts that sometime threat the spring, to add a more rejoicing to the prime, and give the sneaped birds more cause to sing. Pain pays the income of each precious thing. Huge rocks, high winds, strong pirates, shells and sands, the merchant fears, ere rich at home he lands. Now is he come unto her chamber door, that shuts him from the heaven of his thought, which, with a yielding latch, and with no more, hath barred him from the blessed thing he sought. So from himself impiety hath wrought, that for his prey to pray he doth begin, as if the heavens should countenance his sin. But in the midst of his unfruitful prayer, having solicited the eternal powers that his foul thoughts might compass his fair fare, and they would stand auspicious to the hour, even there he starts. Quoth he, I must deflower. The powers to whom I pray abhor this fact. How can they then assist me in the act? Then love and fortune be my gods, my guide. My will is backed with resolution. Thoughts are but dreams until their effects be tried. The blackest sin is cleared with absolution. Against love's fire, fear's frost hath dissolution. The eye of heaven is out, and misty night covers the shame that follows sweet delight. This said, his guilty hand plucked up the latch, and with his knee the door he opens wide. The dove sleeps fast, that this night owl will catch. Thus treason works, ere traitors be espied. Who sees the lurking serpent steps aside? But she, sound sleeping, fearing no such thing, lies at the mercy of his mortal sting. Into the chamber wickedly he stalks, and gazeth on her yet unstained bed. The curtains being close, about he walks, rolling his greedy eyeballs in his head. By their high treason is his heart misled, which gives the watchword to his hand full soon to draw the cloud that hides the silver moon. Her lily hand, her rosy cheek lies under, cousining the pillow of a lawful kiss, who therefore angry seems to part in sunder, swelling on either side to want his bliss, between whose hills her head entombed is, where like a virtuous monument she lies, to be admired of lewd, unhallowed eyes. Without the bed, her other fair hand was on the green coverlet, whose perfect white showed like an April daisy on the grass, with pearly sweat resembling dew of night. Her eyes, like marigolds, had sheathed their light, and canopied in darkness sweetly lay till they might open to adorn the day. Her hair, like golden threads, played with her breath. O modest wantons, wanton modesty, showing life's triumph in the map of death, and death's dim look in life's mortality, each in her sleep themselves so beautify, as if between them twain there were no strife, but that life lived in death, and death in life. What could he see? But mightily he noted. What did he note? But strongly he desired what he beheld. On that he firmly doted, and in his willful eye he tired. With more than admiration he admired her azure veins, her alabaster skin, her coral lips, her snow-white dimpled chin. As the grim lion fawneth o'er his prey, sharp hunger by the conquest satisfied, so o'er this sleeping soul doth Tarquin stay his rage of lust, by gazing qualified, slaked, not suppressed. For standing by her side, his eye, which late this mutiny restrains, unto a greater uproar tempts his veins, his drumming heart cheers up his burning eye. His eye commends the leading to his hand as proud of such a dignity, smoking with pride, marched on to make his stand on her bare breast, the heart of all her land, whose ranks of blue veins, as his hand did scale, left their round turrets destitute and pale. They, mustering to the quiet cabinet with their dear governess and lady lies, do tell her she is dreadfully beset, and fright her with confusion of their cries. She, much amazed, breaks ope her locked-up eyes, who, peeping forth this tumult to behold, are by his flaming torch dimmed and controlled. Imagine her as one in dead of night, from forth dull sleep by dreadful fancy waking, that thinks she hath beheld some ghastly sprite, whose grim aspect sets every joint a-shaking. What terror 'tis! But she, in worse a-taking, from sleep disturbed, heedfully doth view the sight which makes supposed terror true. His rude hand that yet remains upon her breast, rude ram to batter such an ivory wall, may feel her heart, poor citizen, distressed, wounding itself to death, rise up and fall, shaking his hand, that his hand beats with awe. This moves in him more rage and lesser pity, to make the breach and enter this sweet city. First, like a trumpet, doth his tongue begin to sound a parley to his heartless foe, who o'er the white sheet peers her whiter chin, the reason of this rash alarm to know, which he with dumb demeanour seeks to show. But she, with vehement prayers, urges still, under what colour he commits this ill. Thus he replies, the colour in thy face, that even for anger makes the lily pale, and the red rose blush at her own disgrace. Under that colour am I come to scale thy never conquered fort. The fault is thine, for those thine eyes betray thee unto mine. Thus I forestall thee, if thou mean to chide. Thou beauty hath ensnared thee to this night, where thou with patience must my will abide, my will that marks thee for my earth's delight, which I to conquer sought with all my might, but as reproof and reason beat it dead by thy bright beauty was it newly bred. I have debated, even in my soul, what wrong, what shame, what sorrow I shall breed, but nothing can affection's course control, or stop the headlong fury of his speed. I know repentant tears ensue the deed, reproach, disdain, and deadly enmity, yet strive I to embrace mine infamy. Here his falchion he rises to the skies, and coucheth Lucrece below. As the falcon, Lucrece, and her eyes, trembling as fowls hear falcons' bells. Lucrece, quoth he. This night I must enjoy thee. If thou deny, then force must work my way. For in thy bed I purpose to destroy thee. That done, some worthless slave of thine I'll slay, to kill thine honour with thy life's decay. And in thy dead arms do I mean to place him, swearing I slew him, seeing thee embrace him. But if thou yield, I rest thy secret, friend. The thought unknown is as a fault unacted. A little harm done to a great good end, for lawful policy remains enacted. The poisonous simple sometime is compacted in a pure compound, being so applied, his venom in effect is purified. He with a cockatrice dead killing eye, he rouseth up himself and makes a pause, while she, the picture of pure piety, like a white hind under the gripe's sharp claws, pleads in a wilderness there are no laws, to the rough beast that knows no gentle right, nor aught obeys but his foul appetite. Her pity-pleading eyes are sadly fixed in the remorseless wrinkles of his face. Her modest eloquence with sighs is mixed, which to her oratory adds more grace. She puts the period often from his place, and midst the sentence so her accent breaks, that twice she doth begin. At once she speaks, she conjures him by high almighty Jove, by knighthood gentry and sweet friendship's oaths, by her untimely tears, her husband's love, by holy human law and common troth, by heaven and earth and all the power of both, that to his borrowed bed he make retire and stoop to honour, not to foul desire. My husband is thy friend, for his sake spare me. Thyself art mighty, for thine own sake leave me, myself a weakling. Do not then ensnare me. Thou look'st not like deceit, do not deceive me. My sighs, like whirlwinds, labour hence to heave thee. If ever man were moved with woman's moans, be moved by my tears, my sighs, my groans. And wilt thou be the school where lust shall learn? Must he in thee read lectures of such shame? Wilt thou be glass wherein it shall discern authority for sin, warrant for blame? To privilege dishonour in thy name, thou beckst reproach against long-living lord, and makes fair reputation but a bawd. To thee, my heaved-up hands appeal, not to seducing lust. Thy rash relier I sue, for exiled majesties repeal. Let him return, and flattering thoughts retire. His true respect will prison false desire, and wipe this dim mist from thy doting eye, that thou shalt see thy state and pity mine. Have done, quoth he. My uncontrolled tide turns not, but swells the higher by this let. Small lights are soon blown out, huge fires abide, and with the wind in greater fury fret. The petty streams that pay a daily debt to their salt sovereign with their fresh falls haste add to his flow, but alter not his taste. Thou art, quoth she, a sea, a sovereign king, and lo, there falls into thy boundless flood black lust, dishonour, shame, misgoverning, who seeks to stain the ocean of thy blood. If all these petty ills shall change thy good, thy sea within a puddle's womb is hurt, not the puddle in thy sea dispersed. So let thy thoughts, low vassals, to thy sake no more, quoth he, By heaven, I will not hear thee! Yield to my love. If not, enforced hate instead of love's coy touch shall rudely tear thee. That done, despitefully, I mean to bear thee unto the base bed of some rascal groom, to be thy partner in this shameful doom. This said, he set his foot upon the light. For light and lust are deadly enemies. Shame folded up in blind concealing night, when most unseen, then most doth tyrannize. The wolf hath seized his prey. The poor lamb cries, until with her own white fleece, her voice controlled, entombs her outcry in her lips' sweet fold. For with the knightly linen that she wears, he pens her piteous clamours in her head, cooling his hot face on the chastest tears that ever modest eyes with sorrow shed. Oh, that prone lust should stain so pure a bed, the spots whereof could weeping purify? Her tears should drop on them perpetually. But she hath lost a dearer thing than life, and he hath won what he would lose again. This forced league doth force a further strife. This momentary joy breeds months of pain. This hot desire converts to cold disdain. Pure chastity is rifled of her store, and lust, the thief, far poorer than before. Even in this thought through the dark night he stealeth, a captive victor that hath lost in gain, bearing away the wound that nothing healeth, the scar that will, despite of cure, remain, leaving his spoil perplexed in greater pain. She bears the load of lust he left behind, and he the burthen of a guilty mind. He, like a thievish dog, creeps sadly thence. She, like a wearied lamb, lies panting there. He scowls and hates himself for his offence. She, desperate, with her nails her flesh doth tear. He faintly flies, sweating with guilty fear. She stays, exclaiming on the direful night. He runs and chides his banished loathed delight. He thence departs a heavy convertite. She there remains, a hopeless castaway. He in his speed looks for the morning light. She prays she never may behold the day. For day, quoth she, night's scapes doth open lay, and my true eyes have never practised how to cloak offences with a cunning brow. They think not but that every eye can see the same disgrace which they themselves behold. And therefore would they still in darkness be, have their unseen sin remain untold, for their grief with weeping will unfold and grave, like water that doth eat and steal upon my face what helpless shame I feel. Here she exclaims against repose and rest, and bids her eyes hereafter still be blind. She wakes her heart by beating on its breast, and bids it leap from thence, where it may find some purer chest to close. So pure a mind, frantic with grief, thus breathes she forth her spite against the unseen secrecy of night. Oh, comfort-killing night, image of hell, dim register and notary of shame, vast sin-concealing chaos, nurse of blame, blind, muffled boar, dark harbour for defame, grim cave of death, whispering conspirator, with close-tongued treason and the ravisher, with rot and damp, ravish the morning air. Let their exhaled, unwholesome breaths make sick the life of purity, the supreme fair. Ere he arrive, his weary noontide prick, and let thy musty vapours march so thick that in their smoky ranks his smothered light may set at noon, and make perpetual night. Were Tarquin night, as he's but night's child, the silver-shining queen he would disdain, her twinkling handmaids too, by him defiled, through night's black bosom should not peep again. So should I have co-partners in my pain, and fellowship in woe doth woe assuage, as palmers' chats make short their pilgrimage. But now I have no one to blush with me, to cross their arms and hang their heads with mine, to mask their brows and hide their infamy. But I alone, must sit and pine, seasoning the earth with showers of silver brine, mingling my talk with tears, my grief with groans, poor wasting monuments of lasting moans. The nurse, to still her child, will tell my story, and fright her crying babe with Tarquin's name. The orator, to deck his oratory, will couple my reproach to Tarquin's shame. These finding minstrels, tuning my defame, will tie the hearers to attend each line how Tarquin wronged me, I Collatine. Yet am I guilty of thy honour's rack, yet for thy honour did I entertain him. Coming from thee, I could not put him back, for it had been dishonour to disdain him. Besides, of weariness he did complain him, and talked of virtue. Oh, unlooked for evil, when virtue is profaned in such a devil. Oh, opportunity, thy guilt is great. 'Tis thou that executes the traitor's treason. Thou set'st the wolf where he the lamb may get. Whoe'er plots the sin, thou points the season. 'Tis thou that spurn'st at right, at law, at reason, and in thy shady cell, when none may spy him, sits sin to seize the souls that wander by him. Thy secret pleasure turns to open shame, thy private feasting to a public fast, thy smoothing titles to a ragged name, thy sugared tongue to bitter wormwood taste. Thy violent vanities can never last. How comes it then, vile opportunity, being so bad, such numbers seek for thee? When wilt thou be the humble suppliant's friend, and bring him where his suit may be obtained? When wilt thou sort an hour great strifes to end, or free that soul which wretchedness hath chained? Give physic to the sick, ease to the pain, the poor, lame, blind, halt, creep, cry out for thee. But they ne'er meet with opportunity. The patient dies while the physician sleeps. The orphan pines while the oppressor feeds. Justice is feasting while the widow weeps. Advice is sporting while infection breeds. Thou grant'st no time for charitable deeds. Wrath, envy, treason, rape, and murder's rages, thy heinous hours wait on them as their pages. When truth and virtue hath to do with thee, 1,000 crosses keep them from thy aid. They buy thy help. But sin ne'er gives a fee, he gratis comes, and thou art well apaid, as well to hear as grant what he has said. My Collatine would else have come to me when Tarquin did, but he was stayed by thee. Guilty thou art of murder and of theft, guilty of perjury and subornation, guilty of treason, forgery and shift, guilty of incest, that abomination, an accessory by thine inclination to all sins past and all that are to come, from the creation to the general doom. Why hath thy servant Opportunity betrayed the hours thou gavest me to repose, cancelled my fortunes, and enchained me to endless date of never-ending woes? Time's office is to fine the hate of foes, to eat up errors by opinion bred, not spend the dowry of a lawful bed. Time's glory is to calm contending kings, to unmask falsehood and bring truth to light, to mark the seal of time in aged things, to wake the morn and sentinel the night, to wrong the wronger till he render right, to ruinate proud buildings with thy hours, and smear with dust their glittering golden towers, to fill with wormholes stately monuments, to feed oblivion with decay of things, to blot old books and alter their contents, to pluck the quills from ancient ravens' wings, to dry the old oak's sap and cherish springs, to spoil antiquities with hammered steel and turn around the giddy fortune's wheel. Why work'st thou mischief in thy pilgrimage, unless thou couldst return to make amends? One poor retiring minute in an age would purchase thee 1,000 friends, lending him which the too bad debtors lends. Oh, this dread night, couldst thou 1 hour come back, I could prevent this storm and shun thy wrack. Oh, time, thou ceaseless lackey to eternity, with some mischance, cross Tarquin in his flight, devise extremes beyond extremity to make him curse his cursed crimeful night. The ghastly shadows his lewd eyes affright, and the dire thought of his committed evil shape every bush. A hideous, shapeless devil disturb his hours of rest with restless trances. Afflict him in his bed with bed-rid groans. Let there be chance in pitiful mischances to make him moan, but pity not his moans. Stone him with hearts harder than stoned, and let mild women to him lose their mildness, wilder to him than tigers in their wildness. Let him have time to tear his curled hair, Let him have time against himself to rave. Let him have time of time's help to despair. Let him have time to live a loathed slave. Let him have time a beggar's oughts to crave, and one to see one that by alms doth live, disdain to him, disdained scraps to give. Let him have time to see his friends, his foes, and merry fools to mock at him resort. Let him have time to mark how slow time goes in time of sorrow, and how swift and short his time of folly and his time of sport. And ever let his unrecalling crime have time to wail the abusing of his time. O time, thou tutor both to good and bad, teach me to curse him that thou taught'st this ill at his own shadow. Let the thief run mad, himself seek every hour to kill. Such wretched hands, such wretched blood should spill. For whoso base with such an office have, as slanderous deathsman to so base a slave. Out, idle words, servants to shallow fools, unprofitable sounds, weak arbitrators. Busy yourselves in skill contending schools, debate where leisure serves with dull debaters. To trembling clients be you mediators. For me, I force not argument a straw, since that my case is past the help of law. In vain I rail at opportunity, at time, at Tarquin, and uncheerful night. In vain I cavil with mine infamy. In vain I spurn at my confirmed despite. This helpless smoke of words doth me no right. The remedy, indeed, to do me good, is to let forth my foul, defiled blood. Poor hand, why quiverest thou at this decree? Honour thyself to rid me of this shame, for if I die, my honour lives in thee. But if I live, thou livest in my defame, since thou couldst not defend thy loyal dame, and wast afeard to scratch her wicked foe, killed both thyself and her for yielding so. This said, from her betumbled couch she starteth, to find some desperate instrument of death. But this no slaughterhouse, no tool imparteth to make more ventful passage of her breath, which thronging through her lips, so vanisheth as smoke from Etna that in air consumes, or that which from discharged cannon fumes. In vain, quoth she, I live and seek in vain some happy means to end a hapless life. I feared by Tarquin's falchion to be slain, yet for the self-same purpose seek a knife. Yet when I feared, I was a loyal wife. So am I now? Oh no, that cannot be. Of that true type hath Tarquin rifled me. Or that is gone for which I sought to live. And therefore now I need not fear to die. To clear this spot by death, at least I give a badge of fame to slander's livery, a dying life to living infamy. Poor, helpless help, the treasure stolen away, to burn the guiltless casket where it lay. By this, lamenting Philomel had ended the sad-tuned warble of her nightly sorrow, and solemn night, with slow, sad gait, descended to ugly hell, when lo, the blushing morrow lends light to all fair eyes that light will borrow. But cloudy Lucrece shames herself to see, and therefore still in night would cloistered be. Revealing day through every cranny spies, and seems to point her out where she sits weeping, to whom she sobbing speaks. O eye of eyes, why priest thou through thy window? Leave thy peeping. Mock with thy tickling beams eyes that are sleeping. Brand not my forehead with thy piercing light, for day hath naught to do what's done by night. So she, deep drenched in a sea of cares, holds disputation with each thing she views, and to herself all sorrow doth compare. No object but her passion's strength renews, and as one shifts, another strait ensues. Sometime her grief is dumb, and hath no words. Sometime 'tis mad, and too much talk affords. Come, Philomel, that sings of ravishment, make thy sad grove in my dishevelled hair. As the dank earth weeps at thy languishment, so I at each sad strain will strain a tear, and with deep groan the diapason bear. For burthen-wise I'll hum on Tarquin still, whilst thou on Tereus descants better skill, and whilst against a thorn thou bear'st thy part to keep thy sharp woes waking, wretched I, to imitate thee well against my heart, will fix a sharp knife to affright mine eye, who if it wink shall thereon fall and die. These means as frets upon an instrument shall tune our heartstrings to true languishment. To kill myself, quoth she, alack, what were it? But with my body, my poor soul's pollution, they that lose half with greater patience bear it than they whose whole is swallowed in confusion. That mother tries a merciless conclusion, who having two sweet babes, when death takes one will slay the other, and be nurse to none. My body or my soul, which was the dearer, when the one pure, the other made divine, whose love of either to myself was nearer, when both were kept for heaven and collatine. I me, the bark peeled from the lofty pine, his leaves will wither and his sap decay, so must my soul, her bark being peeled away. Her house is sacked, her quiet interrupted, her mansion battered by the enemy, her sacred temple spotted, spoiled, corrupted, grossly ingirt with daring infamy. Then let it not be called impiety, if in this blemish fort I make some hole, through which I may convey this troubled soul. Yet die I will not, till my collatine have heard the cause of my untimely death, that he may vow in that sad hour of mine revenge on him that made me stop my breath, my stained blood, to Tarquin I'll bequeath, which by him tainted shall for him be spent, and as his due writ in my testament, thou, Collatine, shalt oversee this will. How was I overseen that thou shalt see it? My blood shall wash the slander of mine ill. My life's foul deed, my life's fair end shall free it. Faint not, faint heart, but stoutly say, so be it. Yield to my hand shall conquer thee. Thou dead, both die, and both shall victors be. This plot of death, when sadly she had laid, and wiped the brinish pearl from her bright eyes, with untuned tongue, she hoarsely calls her maid, whose swift obedience to her mistress hies, for fleet-winged duty with thought's feathers prize. Poor Lucrece unto her maid seems so as winter meads when sun doth melt their snow. Her mistress she doth give demure good morrow, with soft, slow tongue, true mark of modesty, and sorts a sad look to her lady's sorrow. For why her face wore sorrow's livery, but dares not ask of her audaciously why her two sons were cloud eclipsed so, nor why her fair cheeks o'erwashed with woe. A pretty while these pretty creatures stand, like ivory conduits coral cisterns filling. One justly weeps, the other takes in hand. No company, no cause, but company of her drops spilling. Their gentle sex to weep are often willing, grieving themselves to guess at others' smarts, and then they drown their eyes or break their hearts. But tell me, girl, when went, and there she stays, till after a deep groan. Tarquin, from hence? Madam, ere I was up, replied the maid, the more to blame my sluggard negligence, yet with the fault I thus far can dispense, myself was stirring ere the break of day, and ere I rose, was Tarquin gone away. But lady, if your maid may be so bold, she would request to know your heaviness. Oh, peace, quoth Lucrece. If it should be told, the repetition cannot make it less. For more it is than I can well express. And that deep torture may be called a hell, when more is felt than one hath power to tell. Go get me hither paper, ink, and pen. Yet save that labour, for I have them here. What should I say? One of my husband's men, bid thou be ready by and by to bear a letter to my lord. My love, my dear, bid him with speed prepare to carry it. The cause craves haste, and it will soon be writ. Her maid is gone, and she prepares to write. First hovering over the paper with her quill, conceit and grief and eager combat fight. What wit sets down is blotted straight with will. This is too curious good. This blunt and ill, much like a press of people at the door, throng her inventions, which shall go before. At last, she thus begins. Thou worthy lord of that unworthy wife that greeteth thee, health to thy person. Next, vouchsafe to afford, if ever love thy Lucrece thou wilt see, some present speed to come and visit me, so I commend me from our house in grief. My woes are tedious, though my words are brief. Here folds she up the tenor of her woe, her certain sorrow writ uncertainly. By this short schedule Collatine may know her grief, but not her grief's true quality. She dares not thereof make discovery, lest he should hold it, her own gross abuse, as she with blood had stained her stained excuse. Besides, the life and reason of her passion she hoards to spend when he is by to hear her, when sighs and groans and tears may grace the fashion of her disgrace, the better so to clear her of that suspicion which the world might bear her. To shun this blot, she would not blot the letter with words, till action might become them better. Her letter now is sealed, and on it writ at Ardea to my lord with more than haste. The post attends, and she delivers it, charging the sour-faced groom to hie as fast as lagging fowls before the northern blast. Speed more than speed, but dull and slow she deems. Extremity still urgeth such extremes. But long she thinks till he return again, and yet the duteous vassal scarce is gone. The weary time she cannot entertain, for now 'tis stale, to sigh, to weep and groan. So woe hath wearied woe, moan tired, moan, that she her plaints a little while doth stay, pausing for means to mourn some newer way. At last, she calls to mind where hangs a piece of skilful painting made for Priam's Troy, before the witch is drawn the power of Greece, for Helen's rape, the city to destroy. Threatening cloud, kissing Ilion with annoy, which the conceited painter drew so proud, as heaven it seemed to kiss the turrets bowed. 1,000 lamentable objects there, in scorn of nature, art gave lifeless life. Many a dry drop seemed a weeping tear, shed for the slaughtered husband by the wife. The red blood reeked to show the painter's strife, and dying eyes gleamed forth their ashy lights, like dying coals, burnt out in tedious night. To this well-painted piece is Lucrece come, to find a face where all distress is stilled. Many she sees, where cares have carved some, but none where all distress and dolour dwelled. Till she, despairing, Hecuba beheld, staring on Priam's wounds with her old eyes, which bleeding under Pyrrhus' proud foot lies. In her the painter had anatomized time's ruin, beauty's rack and grim care's reign. Her cheeks with chops and wrinkles were disguised. Of what she was no semblance did remain. Her blue blood changed to black in every vein, wanting those springs which the shrunk heights had fed, showed life imprisoned in a body dead. On this sad shadow Lucrece spends her eyes, and shapes her sorrow to the beldame's woes, who nothing wants to answer her but cries and bitter words to ban her cruel foes. The painter was no god to lend her those, and so Lucrece swears he did her wrong to give her so much grief, and not a tongue. Poor instrument, quoth she, without a sound, I'll tune thy woes with my lamenting tongue, and drop sweet balm in Priam's painted wounds, and rail on Pyrrhus that hath done him wrong. And with my tears quench Troy that burns so long. And with my knife scratch out the angry eyes of all the Greeks that are thine enemies. Show me the strumpet that began this stir, that with my nails her beauty I may tear. Thy heat of lust on Paris did incur, this wrath, this flaming Troy doth bear. Thy eye kindled the fire that burneth here. And here, in Troy, for trespass of thine eye, the sire, the son, the dame, and daughter die. Why should the private pleasure of some one become the public plague of many more? Let sin alone committed light alone upon his head that has transgressed so. Let guiltless souls be freed from guilty woe. For one's offence, why should so many fall to plague a private sin? In general, lo, here weeps Hecuba. Here Priam dies. Here manly Hector faints. Here Troilus sounds. Here friend by friend in bloody channel lies. And friend to friend gives unadvised wounds. And one man's lust these many lives confounds. Had doting Priam checked his son's desire, Troy had been bright with fame and not with fire. Here feelingly she weeps Troy's painted woe, for sorrow like a heavy hanging bell, one set on ringing with his own weight goes. So Lucrece set a work, sad tales doth tell, to penciled pensiveness and coloured sorrow. She lends them words, and she their looks doth borrow. Thus ebbs and flows the current of her sorrow, and time doth weary time with her complaining. She looks for night, and then she longs for morrow, and both, she thinks, too long with her remaining. Short time seems long in sorrow's sharp sustaining. Though woe be heavy, yet it seldom sleeps, and they that watch see time, how slow it creeps. But now the mindful messenger comes back, brings home his lord and other company, who finds his Lucrece clad in mourning black, and round about her tear-bestained eye blue circles stream like rainbows in the sky. These water-gulls in her dim elements foretell new storms to those already spent, which when her sad beholding husband saw, amazedly in her sad face he stares. Her eyes, though sod in tears, looked red and raw, her lively colour killed with deadly cares. He hath no power to ask her how she fares. Both stood like old acquaintance in a trance, met far from home, wondering each other's chance. At last he takes her by the bloodless hand and thus begins. What uncouth ill event hath thee befallen that thou dost trembling stand? Sweet love, what spite hath thy fair colour spent? Why art thou thus attired in discontent? Unmask, dear, dear, this moody heaviness, and tell thy grief, that we may give redress. 3 times with sighs she gives her sorrow fire, ere once she can discharge one word of woe, at length, addressed to answer their desire, she modestly prepares to let them know her honour is ta'en prisoner by the foe, while Collatine and his consorted lords with sad attention long to hear her words. And now this pale swan in her watery nest begins the certain dirge of her ending. Few words, quoth she, shall fit the trespass best, when no excuse can give the fault amending. In me, more woes than words are now depending, and my laments would be drawn out too long to tell them all with one poor tired tongue. Then be this all the task it hath to say. Dear husband, in the interest of thy bed, a stranger came, and on that pillow lay, where thou was wont to rest thy weary head. And what wrong else may be imagined by foul enforcement might be done to me, from that, alas, thy Lucrece is not free. For in the dreadful dead of dark midnight, a creep with shining falchion in my chamber came a creeping creature with a flaming light, and softly cried, Awake, thou Roman dame, and entertain my love, else lasting shame on thee and thine this night I shall inflict, if thou my love's desire do contradict. With this I did begin to start and cry, and then against his heart he set his sword, against my heart, swearing, unless I took all patiently, I should not live to speak another word, so should my shame still rest upon record, and never be forgot in mighty Rome, the adulterate death of Lucrece and her groom. Oh, teach me how to make mine own excuse, or at the least this refuge let me find, though my gross blood be stained with this abuse. Immaculate and spotless is my mind, that was not forced, that never was inclined to accessory yieldings, but still pure, doth in her poisoned closet yet endure. Lo, here the hopeless merchant of this lost, with head declined, and voice dammed up with woe, with sad set eyes and wretched arms across, from lips new waxen pale begins to blow the grief away that stops his answer so. But wretched as he is, he strives in vain. What he breathes out, his breath drinks up again, which speechless woe of his, poor she attendeth. At his untimely frenzy thus awaketh, Dear Lord, thy sorrow to my sorrow lendeth another power, no flood by raining slaketh. My woe too sensible, thy feeling maketh more feeling painful. Let it then suffice to drown one woe, one pair of weeping eyes. And for my sake, when I might charm thee so, for she that was thy Lucrece, now attend me. Be suddenly revenged on my foe. Thine, mine, his own, thinks that thou defends me from what is past. The help that thou shalt lend me comes all too late. Yet let the traitor die, for sparing justice feeds iniquity. But ere I name him, you, fair lords, speaking to those that came with Collatine, shall plight your honourable fates to me with swift pursuit to venge this wrong of mine, for 'tis a meritorious fair design. To chase injustice with revengeful arms, knights by their oaths should right poor ladies' harms. With this, each noble lord began to promise aid, as bound in knighthood to her imposition, longing to hear the hateful foe berate. But she, that yet her sad task hath not said, the protestation stops. "Oh, speak," quoth she, "how may this forced stain be wiped from me?" With this they all at once began to say, her body's stain, her mind untainted clears, while with a joyless smile she turns away the face, that map which deep impression bears of hard misfortune, carved it in with tears. "No, no," quoth she, "no dame hereafter living by my excuse shall claim excuses giving." Here, with a sigh as if her heart would break, she breathes forth Tarquin's name. He! But more than he, her poor tongue could not speak, till after many accents and delays, untimely breathing, sick and short essays, she utters this: He, fair lords, 'tis he that guides this hand to give this wound to me. Even here she sheathed in her harmless breast a harmful knife, that thence her soul unsheathed. That blow did bail it from the deep unrest of that polluted prison where it breathed. Her contrite sighs unto the clouds bequeathed her winged sprite, and through her wounds doth fly life's lasting date from cancelled destiny. Stone still, astonished with this deadly deed, stood Collatine and all his lordly crew. Till Lucrece' father, that beholds her bleed, himself on her self-slaughtered body threw, and from the purpled fountain Brutus drew the murderous knife, and as it left the place, her blood in poor revenge held it in chase. And bubbling from her breast, it doth divide in two slow rivers, that the crimson blood circles her body in on every side, where like a late-sacked island vastly stood, bare and unpeopled in this fearful flood. Some of her blood, still pure and red, remained, and some looked black, and that false Tarquin stained. Daughter, dear daughter, old Lucretius cries, that life was mine which thou hast here deprived. If in the child the image of the father lies, where shall I live now Lucrece is unlived? Thou wast not to this end from me derived. Then live, sweet Lucrece, live again, and see thy father die, and not thy father thee. By this, starts Collatinus from a dream, and bids Lucretius give his sorrow place. And then, in key cold Lucrece bleeding stream, he falls and bathes the pale fear in his face, and counterfeits to die with her a space, till manly shame bids him possess his breath, and live to be revenged on her death. The deep vexation of his inward soul hath served a dumb arrest upon his tongue. Who, mad that sorrow should his use control, and keep him from a heart-easing word so long, begins to talk? But through his lips do throng weak words, so thick come in his poor heart's aid, that no man could distinguish what he said. Yet sometime Tarquin was pronounced plain, but through his teeth, as if the name he tore. This windy tempest, till it blow up rain, held back his sorrow's tide to make it more. At last it rains, and busy winds give o'er. Then son and father weep with equal strife. Who should weep most, for daughter or for wife? Woe, quoth Lucretius, I did give that life which she too early and too late hath spilt. Woe, woe, quoth Collatine, she was my wife. I owed her, and 'tis mine that she hath killed. My daughter and my wife, with clamours fill the dispersed air, who holding Lucrece's life answered their cries. My daughter and my wife. Brutus, who plucked the knife from Lucrece's side, seeing such emulation in their woe, began to clothe his wit in state and pride, burying in Lucrece's wounds his folly show. He was the Romans, was esteemed so, as silly jeering idiots are with kings for sportive words and uttering foolish things. But now he throws that shallow habit by, wherein deep policy did him disguise, and armed his long-hid wits advisedly to check the tears in Collatinus' eyes. Thou wronged lord of Rome, quoth he, arise. Let my unsounded self-supposed a fool now set thy long-experienced wit to school. Why, Collatine, is woe the cure for woe? Do wounds help wounds, or grief help grievous deeds? Is it revenge to give thyself a blow for his foul act by whom thy fair wife bleeds? Such childish humour from weak minds proceeds. Thy wretched wife mistook the matter so, to kill herself that should have slain her foe. Courageous Roman, do not steep thy heart in such relenting dew of lamentations, but kneel with me and help to bear thy part to rouse our Roman gods with invocations, since they will suffer these abominations, since Rome herself in them doth stand disgraced. By our strong arms from forth her fair streets chased. Now, by the Capitol that we adore, and by this chaste blood so unjustly stained, by heaven's fair sun that breeds the fatter store, by all our country rights in Rome maintained, and by chaste Lucrece's soul that late complained her wrongs to us, and by this bloody knife, we will revenge the death of this true wife. This said, he struck his hand upon his breast and kissed the fatal knife to end his vow. And to his protestation urged the rest, who wondering at him did his words allow. Then jointly to the ground, their knees they bow. And that deep vow which Brutus made before, he doth again repeat, and that they swore. When they had sworn to this advised doom, they did conclude to bear dead Lucrece thence, to show her bleeding body thorough roam, and so to publish Tarquin's foul offence, which being done with speedy diligence, the Romans plausibly did give consent to Tarquin's everlasting banishment.